Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. My name is Jenny and I'll be facilitating today's event, and today I'm joined by Maitri from the Technical Authority. And just before we get started, I just want to go through some housekeeping with you all. So as always, this event will be recorded and the slides were distributed last week. We will be using Slido throughout this session, so if you have any questions at any point, just type them into Slido. The QR code is on the screen now. I popped a link in the chat, and there's also a joining code if you don't want to scan the QR code. So I'll just leave that on the screen for a moment and wait for people to join. Just while people are signing up to that, I will share the agenda with you all. So as you can see, we do have a few topics to get through. And without further ado, I will hand over to Maitri.
Sorry, I think I've got a ping from Mike just to say sorry that her Wi-Fi unfortunately just dropped out, so she's currently trying to rejoin us. But in the meantime, I'll swoop in and kick us off with a little bit of an intro, and hopefully it won't be too long until Mike joins us. So hello, my name is Lizzie, and I sit on the RTS side along with Maitri. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be taking you through a newly created and introduced process, which has, I suppose, soft launched over the last couple of weeks or so. So this is really just to give a little bit more insight and promote the new process. So we're going to be walking through how we would capture, assess, prioritize, resolve, and then learn from any of the areas which we have land into the newly created central data log. We'll explain the purpose of the log, the roles of the individuals involved, and the governance that underpins the decisions within the process that's being created. By the end of the session, hopefully you'll feel confident with the new process and have a bit of a better understanding around what the purpose of it is, why it came to be, and the type of issues that we'd like to see being submitted into the process. So if we go on to the next slide then, please. Great, thank you. So we'll have a quick look through then the purpose of the central data error resolution log. Apologies. So the reason then the log came to be was off the back of a PAB just before Christmas, identifying the fact that there isn't really a central one place where all data related errors are hosted. So this is with regards to both the logging, resolving and tracking. They're kind of existing in various different logs, committees or email chains, making it pretty hard to have a complete view of what issues are currently we're aware of, numbers of submissions that we've had regards to a certain issue, making it kind of harder to kind of see what's going on across the wider estate. So the four kind of main areas that we're hoping that the log will help with is to improve transparency and visibility. So really one of the aims is to provide that single source of the truth, allowing stakeholders to view current issues and updates, establishing a consistent approach to managing data issues, so making it easier to log, resolve and monitor issues, and to support data quality and confidence. So it's a structured process which helps ensure issues are resolved effectively and efficiently, supporting the opportunity for continuous improvement and feedback. So that's kind of one of the aims as well for the introduction of this process. Yes, we'll hopefully be able to more efficiently manage and resolve our issues. Then there is also the opportunity to look back and reflect on maybe how we could have learned. So moving forward, how can we either prevent the issue from getting to the scale that it was when it entered in the process, or kind of what we can do moving forward to make sure we action into that resolution route quicker. And then finally, just to bring everything into one central log. So that will include new submissions, which will be resolved through the process, or those which are currently being resolved via pre-existing processes or forums, and the fact that we have just got that then wider visibility. Go to the next slide, please. Great, next slide. Thank you. So as previously mentioned, then the log will look to capture two separate types of submission. So all submissions we made via the portal, and we'll take you through on later slides where you can find that specific submission form. But the log will include then existing issues, so data issues which are being managed through established resolution processes, and they're just to be submitted to ensure that wider visibility and end-to-end tracking. There is a set of acceptance criteria. These existing issues do not need to fall into that criteria to be accepted onto the log. As mentioned, they are kind of just there for visibility, though there is the expectation that we would still receive tracking updates with those. So if individuals do visit the log, they do have that up-to-date view of what is happening. The second type then is the newly raised issues. These are newly identified data errors that are not suitable for existing resolution processes. So it might be things that fall through the cracks in terms of acceptance criteria for other processes, or they just kind of don't really sit anywhere nicely, or they might just be, I suppose, cross-spanning, and they kind of just need a central hub to get things up and running. Also a case where investigation is required to understand the root cause and to find the correct resolution route. So these are things where the root cause isn't known at all, and that central group which manages the log and submission will then kind of get their heads together as a bit of a brain trust and look to try and come up with what that best possible route through to resolution is. As kind of pointed, the benefit from that continuous feedback loop will mean that moving forward, kind of that investigation process is quicker, or we can implement some of our lessons learned. And as mentioned, the acceptance criteria does apply to the submissions. If we move on to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. So then these are our acceptance criteria. I'll kind of pause for breath slightly there so that you have a bit of a scan through. But I suppose the reason we've been, quite strict with these and kind of trying to introduce some kind of quite strict guardrails is the fact that we're aware of the fact there are obviously pre-existing processes and forums where data errors and issues are being managed. This process, I suppose, isn't looking to supersede that at all if there are still appropriate channels which are currently being used by the likes of OEMs, and absolutely that is still the route that we would expect you to go and use whilst with regards to those data error issues, but they do need to obviously still be swift in for the visibility. So we'll kind of try to make it as, I suppose, as strict as possible, just to make sure that people still are following the correct pathways in. Thank you. So we'll focus then on the submission process. So we tried to make it as smooth as possible, but I suppose the individuals us who are involved in the creation of the process are aware of the fact that things over the coming months may change now that kind of the process is up and running and live, and we'll start to have some submissions hopefully landing with us. So once we have received the initial submission through, it'll hit our mailbox where from RTS will do initial review of that submission form, and just to make sure we're not missing any of the required information. If we are missing any information, then we will get back to the individual who's made the submission. So just a note to please make sure that if you are kind of submitting through to the log, that you are using the correct submission contact details, so we can get back in touch with you if we kind of do spot that we're missing any information that we need to do that initial review. So it will then go through to the weekly moderation group, which is made up of currently the service delivery managers. But as we progress through, we kind of will make sure that we have the correct people involved in that committee. If we kind of feel that we've got gaps, then we will open that group up to others. So then that group, I suppose, split into two purposes then. So to review the new submissions that kind of meet our acceptance criteria. Those ones will then kind of have, I suppose, a longer process where we will look at what that route through to resolution is. Obviously, that won't necessarily be done in that weekly group, but we might be splinter groups which form off the back of which will then eventually go through to RECRA approval for the proposed route through to resolution. With the submissions, which are just purely being submitted in for visibility purposes, we will again go through those, kind of, I suppose, see if there are any bottlenecks, or if there's anywhere that we think we might be able to help with, I suppose, the network that we've got and the individuals that we're working with, and also to make sure things are progressing through. I think one of the benefits then of running the log is the hope that it is introducing that additional level of accountability and visibility. I think that's kind of noted that's potentially one of the things that has been missing. Over the next week or so, myself and the service delivery managers will be looking at introducing, I suppose, some initially soft SLAs to link in with the process at various different steps. Individuals submitting into the process, we will keep you as up to date as possible with the SLAs, but we would ask for some grace over the first couple of months or so whilst we're getting into grips with the process, and hoping for things to start running a little bit smoother. We could jump to the next slide then, please. So that moderation group then, as mentioned, it will run on a weekly basis, unless after the initial review, we note that we've got a submission that is particularly critical, in which case we will look to mobilise that moderation group as quickly as possible, particularly in cases where we're having to go with that route through to resolution. We might know there's particular areas of risk that have been identified, and we need to get hold of them straight away. And as mentioned, it will go through then RETCO approval. In this case, it is Matt Grant who is involved in that moderation group. So from I suppose a sign-off perspective, there isn't any delay there from our side. So if we go next slide, please. And I think we've got Maitri back on the line with us.
Yeah, thank you for covering, Lizzie.
All right.
Yeah, so we're just looking at the submission form and log now. So in this section, you can see where you can access this. So you can find the submission form by clicking on Organisation Management, and then if you click on the Data Area Management. Next slide, please, Jenny. So when you open the submission form, you can just choose the correct submission type. So it's either an existing issue for visibility or a newly raised issue, because the form fields differ. Selecting the wrong path might slow down and may lead to a rejection while we're trying to clarify the intent there. So just be careful of that. And then we also need to make sure to provide accurate contact details so the moderation group can share outcomes and then ask for any clarifications quickly on that. So just having a look at the submission review and what happens next. Once your item is in the pipeline, it will be reviewed in the weekly moderation group for newly raised issues. The group will recommend a progression route. This could be a cross-party data correction, a system change, an updated guidance, or a link into a broader program of work before passing it to RETCO for approval. You'll receive the outcome at the contact details you provided, including any immediate next steps and timelines for updates. So for existing issues, the group will keep the entry visible and ensure status updates are captured, so there is clear accountability through to resolution, even if the day-to-day activity is being managed elsewhere. And then across both types, the aim is consistent, to maintain the transparency and also provide clear ownership and keep stakeholders informed so problems are resolved efficiently and learning is captured. So if you could please go to the next slide. So we just wanted to invite any questions. So if you pop them into the Slido, or if there's anything that you want to go over again, just let us know and we'll have a look into that.